Being a father is one of the most rewarding endeavors. Now, of course, with most endeavors, you have difficult moments and struggles that go along with the process. Now, children are no different. In fact, it appears that many times the struggles are some of the worst you might actually ever go through. But as low as the valleys might be, the mountains can be twice as high. And with that being said, Godly Guy Stuff believes that this topic really needs to have a segment in and of itself. And that is why I want to introduce Godly Dad Stuff. Hey guys, and welcome to Godly Dad Stuff, a segment of Godly Guy Stuff, which is a group for guys to connect and, collaborate on how we as men can have a stronger impact on our lives and the lives on those who depend on us. So if you are a guy who struggles through life, like me, wondering how to create godly paths that include aspects of raising children, make sure you subscribe to be part of a place that produces content for an iron sharpens iron environment. Now, I also have a locals community for up and coming topics as we continue conversations, and for those of you who wish to dig deeper in life together. Now, I believe everyone has some type of concept in mind when the topic of fatherhood is raised. Of course, you will have to give extra room to those who do not have kids because their concepts are only one-sided and the memories of childhood are all that they can fall back on for what is, or what is not a father. I recall myself having my own preconceived notions of what it would take to be a father, and of course, all of those notions have been wrong in many respects. There's only so much preparation that can go into play, when it comes to things like child rearing and learning to take care of another individual. For instance, there's a story of my wife and I recall the leaving the hospital moments with our firstborn child. And this bizarre concept that I had of leaving without walking by a cash register. Now, I know it sounds ridiculous, but it really seemed like I should have some type of financial transaction happen before I could put her in the car and take her home. I kept wondering, can I really just leave now? Isn't there something else that we need to probably do first? Or maybe I need to have some type of receipt? The thought honestly sounds insane today, but that's where I was. Fatherhood for me had taken many different turns. And there is an understanding that a foundation is built on faith and trust, and is demonstrated far beyond anything that I could understand any other way. To just say that a Christian life is deepened when you become a father is very much an understatement. A father has the potential to see the depths of, almost anything when it comes, to the calling of raising another individual. Now, I am not going to sit here and pretend I have any type of expertise in this topic. There are others out there who have studied the concept of child rearing and fatherhood far more than I would be able to give today. And I do not believe that I have completely any solid answers when it comes to many topics. I will relinquish any concepts that go beyond the age of my oldest child, as I have no experience firsthand when it comes to being a father of anyone older than her. But I do also fall back on the great simplifier, the Bible, as a guide for any of us as we walk down the path of fatherhood, whether we are just beginning or have been on the road for decades. Even so, before we dive into the great simplifier, what is an overview concept of our culture when it comes to fatherhood today? I'm not even sure if I can comprehend a concept like this, but, let's at least try. Fatherhood in the eyes of the world. In the past century, there has been a concerted effort to all but eliminate the concept of fatherhood. Now, the hierarchy aspect of the nuclear family solely relies on a breadwinner who leads and guides the rest of the family towards, the American dream. But I do not believe anyone can argue against the fact that our culture has almost completely eliminated, or should I say fired, the figurehead of the family. If we are looking at this from a factual standpoint, they have a legitimate argument behind this logic though. there has been a sizable amount of the men in our culture who have chosen to view others in their family as merely tools or baggage to their own desires. I'm not sure if it would be a majority, but I think it would be safe to say there's a strong possibility of a majority of men who have ultimately failed when it comes to the responsibilities of fatherhood. And it does not matter if they are Christian or non-Christian. In fact, Christians have been held on a pedestal for decades as the entire reasoning behind bad fatherhood figures. The embodiment of a father figure, according to the perspective of the generalized non-Christian culture in today's world, is a useless dredge on society that has failed at fulfilling his role even before he started. Now, I do want to kind of point out that there is a very real possibility of a warped perspective within this scenario. And if the last few years have taught us anything, is that the media at best presents a warped perspective of reality. Therefore, what I am presenting here as the world's perspective on the viewpoint of fatherhood very well might be completely incorrect in a statistical standpoint. There might be a larger majority of men out there who actually do handle fatherhood in a correct manner, but this goes in direct opposition to today's cultural agenda. So even though I believe the majority of viewers, including myself, have a downtrodden understanding of how our culture sees fathers, this might be completely inaccurate. Now, one thing I'm for certain of, to the victor go the spoils and the writing of history. And history has been written that we have failed in our society as men. Therefore, we need to be fired, or at least removed from the status quo of leader in the family, the Christian father. Now, when it comes to godly guys and the role of father, I do understand that there are many perspectives that are completely established in a personal history. So each of us are going to have a different concept of what a godly father should look like, and therefore there will be a wide-ranging degrees of what is proper and improper for the godly Christian dad. Now, for me personally, I see this as a rather strong positive. The rules and regulations that we are given through Scripture are generalized and are not culturally specific by any measure of the imagination. So we need to understand that our uniqueness as individuals is a strong proponent in leading our families down the path of God's will. We can see these clearly generalized standards in representative in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger by the way you treat them. Rather, bring them up with the discipline and instruction that comes from the Lord. And also we can see this in Colossians chapter 3, verse 21. Fathers, do not aggravate your children, or they will become discouraged. Now, in both of these verses, we're not given clear examples of what it means to provoke your children to anger or aggravate your children. Now, as a father, over the last few years, I have actually learned that picking on one child can mean absolutely nothing to them. But to one of my other children, it can clearly crush them and cause them to go into fury and anger. Now, I do believe that these verses are not limited in any type of specific mannerisms or details clearly, because our cultures dictate different things and individual personalities can make it go even farther. But the clear aspect for these verses is that the father knows their children well enough to not provoke them to anger. So how many of us can say that today, that we know our children well enough to differentiate between pushing them to anger, and simply picking on them? Now, another verse that comes to mind is Hebrews chapter 12, verse 9. Since we respected our earthly fathers who disciplined us, shouldn't we submit even more to the discipline of the Father of our spirits and live forever? Now, here is the crux for where our culture has found a significant weakness in fathers and has formulated the attack that has culminated in the destruction of the father figures in many pockets of our society. We, for decades as men, have attempted to discipline our children in ways that honestly did not produce respect from our children. So therefore, this verse is completely null and void if read by many non-Christians today. And it would actually produce anger and resentment towards not just men, but God. God actually uses the discipline of a father as an example for why we should respect him. If in this case, then when men abuse this authority and discipline outside of the will of God, it produces evidence against Christianity that concludes that men should be demoted out of leadership. Godly dads, I cannot state this more strongly than just simply saying your role as father will be the most important role of your life. Let me say that again. Your role as father will be the most important role of your life. How you represent what a father is and what the father does has direct implications towards who God is and what God does to your children. So when you fail, that reflects directly on God. Now understand that does not mean that God fails. We're in this alone when it comes to our failures. But we have disregarded the importance of our status for far too long. We have clearly abused our powers and authority to such a degree that we have nullified our place in society. It is time to make a stand against this fallacy. Wrap up. I know this is going to be a difficult concept to truly navigate. And ultimately, we all will have our failures. We have a society that rejects us, it mocks us no matter what we do. And even in the Christian culture, our status has been warped. In many respects, we've been given possibly too much authority, or maybe authority that is not equalized within the church body or even within our family. So we have a lot of work to do. When it comes to challenges for now, maybe we should just start on a simplistic platform. And the challenge for this week could be extremely simple, or this might actually be an Everest standing in front of you. Do you know your children? Do you know their likes and dislikes? Do you know what can provoke them to anger? And do you sometimes instigate and use those tactics to actually promote them to anger? How can you better demonstrate what God is through your relationships with your children? Now, this is a massive topic, which is extremely generalized because, guys, we're just getting started with godly dad stuff. But we need to make sure that we're on the right platform. And that platform with us will always be the great simplifier, the Bible. Now it's your turn. All right, what did I miss today? How do you interpret these verses today? And did I mess it up in any way? Now, I know that for myself, I can sometimes provoke my kids to anger, or at least get them exasperated with me. And sometimes it really does feel like, needling a thread. But understand this, and I know that this will not be a pleasant thing to hear, but we will fail. We need to understand this from the get-go because we are all human. And no matter where we succeed or fail, the world's view of us is solely that of our failures. So we need to disregard this viewpoint because there is way more than at stake than our ego. Honestly, our ego probably should be left at the table when we're discussing these topics. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. But, let me know in the comments. Guys, thank you for listening throughout the entire video, and please definitely follow me or join the Godly Guy Stuff group on Gab. Gab is the launching headquarters of the content that is produced for Godly Guy Stuff along with Godly Dad Stuff. So if you're watching this on some other platform, you're missing a lot more content. Now there's also, like I said earlier, a Godly Guy Stuff Locals community where I post content for upcoming videos. You can find even more videos there with sneak peeks and a deeper personal connection with myself, and maybe even future casting on upcoming ideas. So if you want to see what I am working on currently, you go to Gab. For upcoming topics, head on over to Locals. Links are in the descriptions. And guys, I look forward to talking with you and having more conversations continue. Thanks.